Hello everyone, hope you all had a great weekend. This video is going to talk a little bit about some of the questions that were on the levels of organization video. You all responded in forms. I was very happy for everyone's responses. And there were some questions in there. So I'm going to try to answer some of these questions. If you ask the questions, hopefully I'll have said something. If not, let me know and I'll try to make another video. So a lot of your questions are centered around biomes, biospheres, and ecosystems, and kind of what are the differences and how do we explain some of these things. So the first question that we're going to talk about is, what is a biome and how is a biome different than a biosphere, and why are they the way they are? So biomes and biospheres are a little bit more vague because they explain a much larger concept and a larger reason, something that we don't necessarily work with a lot. So we're going to be working a lot with ecosystem, a lot with population. We've talked a lot about that, about the little interactions and stuff like that. But we haven't talked as much about the biosphere or the biome. So first of all, the biosphere is all living things on Earth, everything that is under the atmosphere. So if you look at our little ecosystem here, so if you take my jar, for example, the biosphere, if we just thought of this entire thing as Earth, everything inside there would be the biosphere, because the jar is acting as the ecosystem. It's acting as that seal, that thing trapping in all the life, all the water, all the oxygen. Everything is within that thing. So if we think about it as the world, the Earth and our atmosphere is our biosphere. A lot of you are saying about what does it include in space? Does it go on further than that? Because we haven't really seen life on any other planet, we are pretty unique in that fact here on Earth. We are alone part of the biosphere. And as far as I know, there's nothing bigger than the biosphere right now in the universe. Perhaps if we find life on Mars, or we find another planet that has life like us here on Earth and the same kind of living organisms, maybe we'll need to expand the biosphere. But at this point, we are the biosphere. Everything that lives that is on Earth is us right now. So what's a biome? So a biome is just a little bit smaller than that. And a biome is looping together multiple different ecosystems that are similar. So I gave an example of lakes. However, there's a lot of other different similar examples that we can maybe give. So another one would be like in Manitoba, we have a lot of big pine forests. If you go to a place like Lake of the Woods, or you go to somewhere like Lake Winnipeg, you'll see similar forests in the area, similar fish will be there. The biome can also include bigger regions of Canada. So I know in geography or in social studies, you've talked a bit about areas like the Western Cordillera or Canadian Shield, stuff like that in Canada, or the Canadian prairies. Those would be considered biomes. So you could include much of Saskatchewan and Manitoba and like a bit of Alberta as one biome, all the southern part there, where there's a lot of the similar grasses and there's similar animals and similar birds and similar things living there, similar things grow. A biome is kind of connecting a lot of ecosystems that will have similar climates, similar organisms or species living there, and similar types of things going on. So it's more broader than a general ecosystem. So you could say an ecosystem is like, you could take one forest or one plains area in southern Manitoba. You could say, hey, south of Winnipeg, the area around LaSalle, we're going to look at that as an ecosystem. And then you could say, as a biome, we could look at the southern plains of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Someone asked how many different ecosystems there are. There are hundreds of thousands of different ecosystems in the world. And you can piece ecosystems together depending on different species, but as soon as one kind of species changes or something else changes in that ecosystem, it creates a different ecosystem. So even if you have the exact same forest, say you have like one type of woodpecker that only lives in this one forest and not in the other one that is identical except for that woodpecker, you would have a new ecosystem. That would be something different because there's some other different kind of food web, different kind of organism interaction, something else is going on there. Someone else asked, do non-living things such as deserts count as an ecosystem, or are they within this? So an ecosystem, remember, is having all the biotic or living components as well as all the abiotic or non-living components. And sometimes when you have something like a desert, there's very, very few biotic components. Maybe there's a few cacti, a few insects, maybe like one reptile or two. Those would be considered as the only biotic parts of it, but most of it is abiotic, lots of sand, lots of sun, lots of things like that. That would still be considered an ecosystem. And you'd be very hard-pressed to find anywhere on Earth where nothing lives. There's even vents on the ocean floor that are piping hot, boiling hot water, filled with terrible gases like phosphorus and sulfur. and that would kill almost anything else there. But there are microorganisms and there's tiny little bacteria and things that live in those areas and thrive. So it is very hard to find a place on Earth where there isn't something living. That's what makes our planet so crazy and cool. So looking back at our jar here, the dirt and the rocks underneath would both be considered also parts of an ecosystem. They're the ground base. We have an Earth. If you've talked about the Earth's crust, there's a crust to the Earth. There's the soil on top, then there's a living layer on top of that. Those rocks are still essential. They create a bedrock. They create a basis of what's kind of rocks and what kind of elements are in the soil. So rocks are important in the ecosystem. So that's why if we look at Earth here, we have the biotic component, the little succulent living on the top. We have water, we have sunlight, we have an air in there, we have the atmosphere, and then we also have that layer of organic material where there's microorganisms growing, there's things living in there, and we also have that bedrock, that rock level. So this would be encompassing a lot of what is an ecosystem, all the different abiotic and biotic parts. So thank you, and if you have any more questions, please let me know, send me a message, and I'll try to answer them the best I can.